Jai Sri Ram friends, welcome to Bharat Marg and welcome Vinay Ji to Bharat Marg again. And we are super excited. But today the subject is going to be very interesting and also very difficult one because we are talking about black slavery, black abuse, black life matter, and North American real history. This is what we want to talk about. Vinay Ji, you know what? So many things the people had to go through the human right violation, you know. But anyway, before going further friends, please, we are going to do a series on North America, how the whole continent, North America, Europe got Christianized, what the price has to be paid for it. You know, we will be covering that. So please make sure to like this video, comment on this video, share the video as much as you can. Friends, also make sure to subscribe our channel Bharat Marg and press the notification bell to stay connected, because I can say you one thing: nobody talks the subjects we talk. Nobody says the way we say, because we say it as it is. That's why I like Vinay Ji. When Vinay Ji comes, he talks as it is. You know, absolutely. Vinay Ji, thanks for joining us. And says the black slavery, black abuse, you know, and North American history, Black Lives Matter, and the North American history.
Thank you, Ji. First of all, I would like to start off with a very important quote. It's not directly related to the Black lives oppression and the racism and the inequality and all that stuff, but it'll give you a kind of a bench, like I shouldn't say a benchmark, but it's more of a starting point, how it all started, where it all started, and it goes back to centuries. Okay, so you guys, many of you might have heard of Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu is a South African leader. So Desmond Tutu quoted, when the missionaries came to Africa, when the missionaries, Christian missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. And they said, let us pray. We closed our eyes. When we opened our eyes, we had the Bible and they had the land. Simple.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now going back to black oppression and stuff like that, this is what has happened actually, because these African descent people, that's why they're called African Americans, and even in Canada they're called African Canadians. But it's more prevalent in, that term is more prevalent in the United States, African Americans, because most of these blacks, although some of them claim they came from the Caribbean islands, the Caribbean also was populated by the influx of people from Africa. And how did these people end up in Africa, from Africa in the Caribbean and other continents, right? Other countries. So let's go back to the several centuries ago, right? Mr. Dalipan, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Somehow my camera is off. I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay. No worries. So basically it goes back to about maybe about 300 years. Some people say 246 years to be precise, and some people say some people say about 400 years, some people say 200 years, some people say 500 years. It could be even longer. But let's talk about this. Let's set a date. Okay, hypothetically, let's say 1619. Okay, 1619 to 1865. It's called the American chattel slavery. Okay, American chattel slavery is something that lasted for 246 years, and it is in other words, it's the traditional slavery. It is the system of slavery where people are treated as the chattel or personal property of the owner. Okay, in this system, people are bought and sold as commodities, and the African Americans have been through this. Okay, in addition to being viewed as property, the status of slave is inherited from an enslaved mother to child, and there is no means by which a slave could earn or buy their freedom. You cannot buy your freedom at all. Even if you're making some money on the side, you cannot go to the owner and say, okay, here's some money and set me free. No, it doesn't happen like that. So between 1525 and 1866, 12.5 million people were kidnapped from Africa and sent to the Americas. This includes the Caribbean islands through the transatlantic slave trade, and only 10.7 million survived the harrowing 2-month journey. Okay, around 2 million people even died. They were coming on ships, boats, whatever, right? And in August of 1619, the first enslaved Africans arrived to the English colonies in the Americas, kidnapped by Portuguese slave traders, and more than 20 Angolans were sold to English colonists in Jamestown. This marks the beginning of 246 years of continuous enslavement in what will become the United States. This is how the blacks came into United States, and it's pathetic that the Portuguese might have sold, but the British bought these people. Okay, American slavery developed piecemeal. The English gradually imposed involuntary servitude almost exclusively upon Africans, mainly Africans. They enslaved Africans under a few key premises. Blacks came from a distant continent and could not easily escape or be rescued. So they cannot go home. They don't have a boat, they don't have a ship to go back. Skin color made blacks distinguishable from whites. So it was easy to say, okay, this guy is black, so we'll make him a slave. So, and the third one was European used biblical texts to support the enslavement of blacks. So, like Desmond Tutu said, these people handed them Bible, they even converted them, and then Africans sank deeper and deeper into chattel slavery while European servants improved their quality of lives. So this is the pathetic, the history of slavery, and it's very unfortunate what has happened, and then the next 89 years came in, which was called segregation, and segregation happened between 1865 and 1954. That lasted for about 89 years. And and during this period of time, there's a lot of people were segregated from their families, were not allowed to kind of get into the mainstream, and they were still put down, and things were going on, but not as
and
much as
and
what happened in the previous 246 years.
and Vinay Ji, whomever the guest came home, they can screw anybody who is there. They are like slaves. They are slaves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they can.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
and uh,
uh,
and there was a picture I am looking to show that in Sweden, when the Christian missionaries goes, all the kids and the women will be naked, for them to look around inside the cage. Okay, this is as earliest in the 19th century, 1960 kind of time frame. Not too far. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, you should watch a movie called 12 Years a Slave. Okay, and it's a 2013 movie, biographical period drama film, directed by Steve McQueen, that
The
is
name
based
is
on the
12 years. 12 years
12
slave. Is it?
Years a Slave. You can actually show a small clip of that if you want. 12 Years a Slave. And it's about the memoirs of Solomon Northup, a free black man who was kidnapped and sold into slavery in the North. This is during the segregation time. During the segregation time, not all blacks were slaves. Okay. So there were some people who had actually accomplished quite a bit. There were some people who were lawyers, some people were, uh, you know, quite accomplished. But the problem with this the Solomon Northup in this movie, he's a lawyer, I believe in this movie, and he gets kidnapped because he's a black, and they take him to a camp where they sell him to one of those slave owners, and he works in the plantation in the state of Louisiana for 12 years before being freed. The film is a reminder of the brutality of slavery and the centuries long scars it left on the societies that suffered as a result of these atrocities. And this is unfortunate. And in that movie, they even the owners, who are whites, obviously, they use these black women as their sex slaves as well. And that's
That's what they were.
yeah. So they show that in that movie. And there was another movie called "I'm Not Your Negro." It's actually a 2016 documentary film, directed by Raoul Peck, and it's based on James Baldwin's unfinished work, "Remember This House." The movie again delves into the history of racism in the United States through Baldwin's memories of civil rights activists Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr., as well as his own views of American history. So there are
Absolutely.
quite a few movies that actually show what really happened.
Absolutely.
And
Martin Luther King, if anybody didn't hear it, you had to hear his speech, last speech, "I Had a Dream."
oh
It's a incredible speech. But here is one from a First Nation. It doesn't look like he's a Chief Pontiac. He says, "They came with the Bible and their religion, stole our land, crushed our spirit, and now tell us we should be thankful to the Lord for being saved."
yeah, I mean the
you
the
know
whole the whole idea of this thing was like they wanted to destroy the culture of Africans. They destroy the culture of the blacks, the Christian, the natives here in the U.S. and Canada.
Absolutely.
That was the whole thing.
This
But
is.
I'll tell you a funny thing actually. Okay,
Mhm.
and you'll probably laugh when you hear this. British also came to India. You know that they colonized India, and they took these Indians on the same pretext of putting them into slavery and selling them and whatever. They put them on the boat, a whole bunch of Indians, and then took them to the Caribbean islands, to particularly Trinidad, Tobago, and to Guyana, and some South American countries and the Caribbean islands, right? But and then they said, okay, guys, you have to cut down these trees. You have to do work. You have to work in these rubber plantations, and you have to do all of this. But typically, Indians have always worked as supervisors. They've never worked as laborers. So they put their hands behind their back and said, "Okay, all right, who is here? Let me find a guy who can actually cut the tree. I'm going to supervise him." British are looking, guys. No, 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 no. You are the laborer, sir. I don't know how to work. I'm India. I'm from India. We don't chop wood and all that. I don't know all that. I can be a nice, beautiful supervisor. So finally the British gave up on the Indians. They said, okay, these guys are useless. Let's bring the blacks in. So that is how they brought the blacks in as well. So now you can imagine the Indian community in Trinidad and Tobago. They have never worked as slaves. They cannot be treated as slaves, and they will never be slaves because that's their mentality. And it was fortunately the whole culture was like that, and that's why the Indians survived that, whereas unfortunately the blacks could not survive that.
but but let me come to the current pretext, okay, which is the whole idea. Now there is a caste bill coming, right? Everywhere the Abrahamic gang, the jihadi gang, is propagating around North America and Europe, everywhere, caste bill. How in India the caste discrimination is that these stupids don't know that major of the two epics are written by the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. They don't know that. Okay, I will go through in a separate video on it. They don't know. Okay, they don't know. I'm going to do a video how the monkeys are treated in India, how the cows are treated in India, how the snakes are treated in India. Okay, you had to watch the video. I will recommend every Sanatani kid to watch the India to know your road. It is coming just now. But before going further, why I'm talking about it, when they talk about how Indians, how the Hindus discriminated against caste. But I have a question: how the blacks' life doesn't matter even today in America, even today in Canada? The blacks they get choked by the police every day. They get choked, they get stopped every day by the police. Their kids get they know you if you are a black kid in North America today, friends, you cannot assume. I'm going to give it back to Vinay Ji. He talks very eloquently. One of these days I will learn how to talk like him. But the thing is, that if you are a black kid today in North America, you cannot go out with the assurance you will come back. You may get shot. Yes or no, Vinay?
Absolutely. So let me. I got to give you a little bit of history on why this is happening and why this will continue to happen for maybe a few generations. Okay. Uh, so when American chattel slavery that lasted for 246 years from 1619 to 1865 ended, the segregation period started from 1865 and lasted for 89 years up to 1954. What happened in the segregation is what is continuing to happen now, and I'll tell you what happened in segregation during segregation period. It's very mind-boggling, very pathetic, very kind of some people may get emotional as well about what has happened to the blacks. But I'll tell you something. So during the segregation period in 1865, black codes were laws enacted during this period in order to control the behavior of newly freed blacks, because previous period was the slavery. Now some of the blacks were getting freed in the former Confederacy during the post Civil War Reconstruction era. So, based on pre emancipation slave codes, the laws were designed to replace the social controls of slavery that had been removed by the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Okay, now I'll give you a few examples of what is Black Code. Okay, are you ready for me?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
one of them: any person who is able to work is not allowed to wander or stroll about leisurely. So he cannot just wander off if he's able to work. Such people will be deemed vagrants and can be arrested. Anyone can arrest a vagrant. You don't have to have a police badge or anything to arrest a vagrant. Landowners or other people with a source of income are not subject to vagrancy laws. So anybody who is a landowner or a person who has actually got a source of income cannot be deemed a vagrant. And who are these people? Landowners are whites, people with a source of income are whites. But who are the vagrants? It's the black. So anybody can arrest a black guy. And then second one, no person of color can be an artisan, a mechanic, or a shopkeeper, or pursue any other trade or business besides farming, manual labor, or domestic service. So the black people were only allowed to do farming, which is helping the landowners, manual labor in mines and whatever, or domestic service like washing dishes and stuff in somebody's house. And the former slave owners gets first preference when their former slave children are bound out as apprentices. So if somebody has a kid, like a black person has a kid, the former slave owner of that black person, will have the right on that child as well. Okay. No person of color can testify against a white person in court unless the white person agrees to it, which means the white persons are above law. It is a felony crime for any person of color to marry a white person. They cannot marry white people. And white people may not marry freed men or other people of color. Any
But
person,
but they can screw.
yeah, any person
You
who
know,
commits this crime will be sentenced to life in prison. Only white men can serve on juries, hold office, and vote in any state, county, or municipal election. They didn't even have voting
absolutely,
rights. And
absolutely.
one of the last one, no colored persons have the right to vote, hold office, or sit in juries. So this was the state of affairs of what has happened to the black people. And guess what? This trend is now continuing, maybe in smaller proportion, because the next 61 plus years, which started from 1954, is called the mass incarceration period. The mass incarceration period is basically the blacks are being incarcerated, and slowly but surely, hopefully, they're getting back into the mainstream.
See, think about it. Vinay Ji, many of the American presidents had black slaves,
Right.
okay, including George Washington and all those guys had, who they say, oh, our big hero. They are kind of a they are equal rights, liberty, this one, all the junk what the Americans say, that, right? They all had black slaves,
Mhm.
okay,
Well,
and today,
even the John A. Macdonald, who was the first Prime Minister of Canada, is supposed to have had slaves, and then he also has had natives as slaves, and and there was a lot of oppression, and he has openly said that about bad stuff about the natives, and putting them down, and the blacks and stuff like that. And today we have airports, we have highways in all these people's names. Who is doing anything about it? Nobody.
Take about Trans Canada. If you're talking about Canada, Trans Canada railways, everything is done by Chinese slaves, black slaves, First Nations, right? Yes or no? Black slaves, Chinese slaves, predominantly.
Absolutely. They tried to get Indians involved in slavery, but unfortunately they couldn't, because Indians have a different kind of breed. But yeah, you're
They-
right. So, but
Absolutely.
but the thing is, I'll tell you, this is all right now. What is going on is all appeasement, and it's all lip service, I should say, because whatever the administration in the United States or in Canada is doing is not enough. They've got to do a lot more, and I'll tell you, in January 2022, during the virtual Davos agenda hosted by the World Economic Forum, the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, of the United States, stated a country's long term growth potential depends on the size of its labor force, the productivity of
Wow.
its workers, the renewability of its resources, and the stability of its political system. And this concept underpins the Biden administration's economic growth strategy, which Secretary Yellen has coined modern supply side economics. Okay, but all this is lip service. I mean, like, you got to be a lot more coming out, and kind of making amends to what has happened in the past. It's not that, okay, 100 years ago or 500 years ago this happened, why should I be held responsible? But you are part of the administration, you should take that responsibility.
Absolutely. And in my opinion, I may be wrong. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, Biden, who is the sitting president of America, is the biggest racist president ever came in our recent history. Who said, they will put you back in shackles again, during the election time, even recently. And many racist comments. He has said, Dunkin' Donuts, when you go inside, you will smell Indian. Many things that you hear it, but they get away with it because of the color they have and all the chaplusis that the media they own. Like, you had to, Twitter did the right thing by doing BBC branding them and CBC, etc. You know, uh, they never talk about these things. But last one question to you, okay, Vinayji, there was a big Black Lives Matter protest and so many things we heard during the end of the career of Donald J. Trump presidency. Now what happened? All of a sudden, nobody talks about Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter is still active, still around, and whatever. But it's just that when the shooting of this guy, the one of the he was mentally challenged guy. I forget the name of this guy, in the U.S. happened a few years ago. That kind of um, showed the amount of racism that is there in the in the police department, for example. And they basically marginalize and profile black people, actually. So if a black person is walking on the road, they just cops are willy-nilly, they just stop him and him or her and ask questions, because they assume, the first thing that they assume is all blacks are either drug addicts or drug peddlers. Okay, that's the whole idea, right? So when the shootout happened just a few years ago, and there was a lot of killings has happened in the past where black
And it
people,
happened, continue to happen. In
and it continues to
Chicago,
happen.
how many blacks they even today? There's nobody new newspaper reports it. They talk about Atiq Ahmad, the Mahatma Gandhi of India, getting shot.
Exactly. Oh my God, you can't even compare him to anybody. So yeah, so the thing is, so the I forget the name of that person, like the guy who was
George something, it's struggling for the breath.
yeah. So I mean, like, if for example, in
Many
2014,
killing happened. These
many
are
killings.
high profile
Yeah,
one.
many killings. Like
They
2014, Mike
daily
Brown
happens
was
even
murdered by,
today.
yeah, Mike Brown was murdered by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. And then a few things, like a lot of things have happened, right? So 2013, 2014, and several, and many years ago, it's been going on. I don't want to go back into several years ago, because a lot more blacks have been killed and murdered and whatever, right, by the police officers. And but the
And
later
they
ones
all
we're
still
looking at,
continue the job. They
yeah.
keep continuing in the job, many of them.
Exactly. So basically, the Black Lives Matter took on this as a personal, vendetta, or I shouldn't say vendetta. It's a pretty harsh word, but it's kind of took it upon as an agenda for themselves to say, okay, you know what, this has to stop. This has to stop by within the next little while. And then they started giving ultimatums, and then they started, I don't know if you remember, this was when this murder happened. They went on a rampage in New York City. And George Floyd, that's the guy I'm talking about. Okay. So
Yes.
George Floyd was a 46-year-old black man, and he was murdered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, by Derek Chauvin, a 44-year-old white officer. Floyd had been arrested after a store clerk alleged that Floyd made a purchase using a counterfeit $20 bill. So just to give you a little background on this guy, right? So so after George Floyd, this is not too long ago. I'm talking about 2020, like 3 years ago, right? And huge riots and major protests and whatever happened. And even the US government officials, the senators, and many administration people, they all backed Black Lives Matter. And finally, things are beginning to change, right? Like things like you don't see this more often. The police officers are getting retrained how to handle a black person, don't profile a black person. And this is happening in Canada as well, and across the globe, actually. So that's the reason you're not seeing the Black Lives Matter activists doing so much protests and stuff like
Uh,
that, because things are
I have
happening. Now they're on a kind of a bargaining table, kind of a deal, where they're actually talking to administrators and the government officials more at
absolutely.
table.
But I have a different thought here before we close, Vinay Ji. I have a different thought here. Okay.
Mhm.
You know what? Black Lives Matter was propped up by the white guys. Okay. George Soros kind of guys for a regime change, and once the regime change was done, they were silenced. Okay, that's one thing. Number two, even today, the amount of black people getting killed every day. I'm talking about every night in downtowns like Chicago or wherever you go. You
New
know
York.
where then it is unproportional to the white killing or any other race killing that happens there in the intercities. Okay, and they don't get proper education, they kept poor even today. Okay, but they will call you and me as a racist, and caste discrimination, everything. You know what? Even today, the black man, black child that goes on the road of North America cannot be assured they will come back safe without taking a bullet. That's a condition today. If you think I'm wrong, please comment. I will love to answer it for you. Okay. Thank you, Vinay Ji.
Thank you,
Jai
Ji.
Sri Krishna. Jai Sri Krishna. Thank you for your input. It means a lot. Jai Sri Krishna.
Promise.